Ladies and gentlemen, bienvenidos, and welcome to the 2017 Uplift Families Parenting Conference at Thanksgiving Point. Tonight we'll be filming the presentation as well as streaming live in Cache County and through social media and Facebook Live. We kindly ask that you silence your cell phones at this time. For those of you who would like Spanish translation, headphones are available in the back of the showroom. There's a mother's room in the very back of the venue for those who have crying infants. Now, let's welcome to the stage our MC this evening, television personality, reporter, and anchor for KUTV Channel 2 News. Ladies and gentlemen, Utah's own Amy Nay.
Hello, isn't this fun? I think we've got the party started already. Now, thank you, Steve. He gave me a wonderful introduction. He left off my favorite title, which is Mom to 4 boys, to be exact. So that's the one that is the hardest job of all. It is my honor to be here tonight on behalf of 2 News, and let me take this moment to thank you for welcoming us into your homes and letting us tell your stories. 2 News is happy to be a part of tonight's event. Welcome to the 2017 Uplift Families Parenting Conference here at beautiful Thanksgiving Point. Isn't it nice? We would like to recognize our community and government leaders and guests who are here tonight, including Utah Governor Gary R. Herbert, First Lady of Utah Jeanette Herbert, as well as Consul Titular of Mexico José Borjón. We also want to welcome our guests at our live stream locations, one in Cache County. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Uplift Families is the initiative of First Lady of Utah, Jeanette Herbert. She is amazing with her passion for this event, this initiative. In fact, it's even reflected in the centerpieces that you all have on your tables. I understand that Mrs. Herbert made those, each of them herself, with her daughters and friends. So what commitment she has to this cause. And it is such an important cause. The purpose of Uplift Families is to provide parents with resources that can help improve their parenting skills and to keep their children safe from negative societal influences. We all know about all the dangers that are facing our kids. There are a number of resources that are made available through the Uplift Families website, YouTube channel, and tonight at the annual conference. This year is the 6th annual Parenting Conference. It is such a great event, and it only gets better and better every year. Tonight, you'll be inspired, educated, and entertained by renowned speakers and qualified experts giving parenting tips. Now, that stands for Teaching Important Parenting Skills. I know I am all ears about this one. You may have noticed my accessory tonight. It's hard to hide it. I didn't really want to make it too pronounced, but it's hard to miss. For me, it was a little fall I took down the stairs. And I know we will all have a little wake up tonight and realize something that we want to change, something we want to do different, and that's why I think a lot of us are here tonight. It is my pleasure right now to introduce you to the president and founder of Uplift Families, a mother of 6. I thought 4 boys was a lot. A mother of 6 and a grandmother of 16. First Lady of Utah, Jeanette Herbert.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everyone to our conference. We're excited to be here again. We'd like to thank again our wonderful entertainment that we've had tonight. It was wonderful, and the food, everything has been great. Let's give them another round of applause. As she said, this is our 6th year that we've done this conference, actually the 7th year since I started my initiative for Uplift Families. And as everyone knows, the reason I started my initiative in the first place was to try to strengthen families and to try to draw parents and children closer together through building better relationships, through better parenting. And so this is what our hope is as you attend these conferences, that you will gain some tips, some skills that you can take home and that you can utilize in raising your children and hopefully have better relationships in your homes. We really have had some wonderful speakers in the past, and we've had a lot of topics, a lot of timely topics that we have addressed. And again tonight, we've got a lot of wonderful speakers, a lot of topics that I think you're going to find really interesting as well as informative. And I'm going to have to cut this a little short tonight. We found out that we have a competition tonight. We have corn bellies going on just right behind us. If you notice, there's a big festival that goes on. It's wonderful. I suggest all of you bring your families to that. We go every year as our family. In fact, we'll be going on Wednesday. But we found out at 8:30 that we have fireworks going off back there. And so I'm going to cut my remarks short this evening so that we can kind of get through our other speakers before those actually take over. So, but basically, the presenters we have are good. They instruct us on a lot of things. They teach us. And we have a lot of times, we're wondering if we're really getting through with our kids. Are we really communicating the way we want to? And sometimes we do things and think, boy, I got that point across, and sometimes it doesn't quite get there. And let me just give you a for instance. There's a story about a father who wanted to teach his young son about underage drinking, about, the evils of underage drinking. And so he went out and he got 2 glasses. He got 1 glass and he put water in that, and he got another glass and he filled it with whiskey. And he sat those out, and he went out in his garden. He got 2 worms, and he got 1 worm and he dropped that in the water. He got another worm and dropped it in the whiskey. And they sat there and watched, and they watched the 1 worm that was in the water as it just kept swimming around, and the worm in the whiskey eventually shriveled up and died. And so finally the father turned to the son and he says, well, son, what do you think? What lesson did you learn from that? The son sat back and he thought for a minute and he thought, well, let me think. He said, well, I guess it shows that if you drink alcohol, you probably aren't going to have worms. Now, I'm quite sure that's not the message he was trying to get across to his son. But sometimes we have to kind of think through what we're doing, and sometimes what we're trying to communicate to our kids isn't always what they're hearing us say. But we're lucky tonight. We've got some really good speakers, and we've got some people that we actually have someone speaking on underage drinking that will actually tell you how to communicate those ideas to your kids so they understand what the real dangers in underage drinking are, as well as our other speakers that have some really timely topics that are going to give us instruction. I hope you take copious notes. I hope you take both mental and physical notes. And remember, the number one thing that we do, the most important job that you will ever have is being a parent. The number one important job you will ever have is being a parent. And as our motto says, when parents lead, kids succeed. So enjoy the conference, and sit back and relax, enjoy the rest of your dinner and your dessert. And we welcome you here, and we're so glad you're here again with us this year. Thank you for coming.
Mrs. Herbert, such an example in so many ways. We would now like to welcome to the stage the Honorable Consul Titular of Mexico, José Borjón. He is here with a special presentation to First Lady of Utah, Jeanette Herbert. Mr. Borjón.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Jeanette Herbert, First Lady of Utah, Governor Herbert. Pleasure. Steve James has done a great job getting this program together from Uplift Families. It is a pleasure to join you for this year's Uplift Families Parenting Conference. As the Mexican Consul for the state of Utah, I firmly believe that our communities need to maintain strong families and meaningful parent-child relationships to prosper in this beautiful state. Latinos and Mexican in particular are historically very family-oriented. We share with the people of Utah traditional values, the recognition that each member of the family has a role to play, and the greater importance we give to the needs of the family over the concerns of the individuals. With us, all life events are viewed as occasions to gather and celebrate, like today. Our concept of family can extend beyond the nuclear unit to include grandparents, aunts, uncles and cousins, friends and neighbors, and organizations that are important to the community, such as churches. In this state, about 14% of the population is Latino or Hispanic. Of those, a majority of whom are of Mexican origin, about 30.2% are under 18 years old. So we share a vibrant representation of the youth of this state. However, for the first time in U.S. history, Hispanic children make up the largest group of children living in poverty. As of 2010, more Latino children now live in poverty, 6.1 million, than children of any other racial or ethnic group. Latino parents are committed to their families. They are well aware of the importance of parent engagement in the education of their young children, but it's not easy if you're working two shifts or have more than one job to follow the development of your child. It is not easy to attend PTA meetings when you are not bilingual or have a basic English proficiency. Parents cannot further their education if there are not after-work schedules or childcare available. That is why I firmly believe that only together, state, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations, we will be able to adequately address the growing challenges the Latino youth is facing today. The Consulate of Mexico offers through its partnerships with local nonprofits the Plazas Comunitarias program. This initiative assists and supports adults in finishing their basic education, elementary, middle school, empowering them to continue their personal development, regaining their standing in their family through their own example of perseverance. I'm proud to share that one of the most successful Plaza Comunitarias programs in the nation is here in this state and is run by Centro de la Familia. Dear friends, the robust growth and youthfulness of the Hispanic population signals the interdependence of this country's faith with this group. Given this relationship, the education and overall well-being of the country's Hispanic children is of greatest importance as they will determine the vibrancy of your future workforce, economy, and most important, families. I would like to invite now Ms. Jeanette Herbert for a token of recognition from the Consulate of Mexico. Thank you. Ms. Jeanette Herbert, First Lady of Utah, please accept, where is it? Here it is. This gift as a recognition from the Consulate of Mexico for your leadership in promoting strong families and meaningful parent-child relationships among the many communities, especially the Latinos in this state. We look forward working together to strengthen parent-child relationship, especially in the Latino community. Thank you for your work and what you're doing today. Thank you.
All right, it is time to liven things up just a little, and we are all going to be treated to a special tribute to the sights and sounds of Mexico by the Utah Hispanic Dance Alliance. Please help me welcome them to the stage. All right, a man many of you may have come to see tonight. Our first speaker of the night is apparently a man who needs very little introduction. I had one prepared. Mr. Dan Clark will kick things off for us tonight. And please, as we often do in the TV news business, let's turn our attention to the video.
He's here? Coming up next? I don't believe it. Dan Clark is here, the international speaker. No kidding. Achievers North America, Achievers Europe. Both of them named Dan Clark one of the top 10 speakers in the world. I thought I was one. He's one. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a singer. You gotta be kidding. He's a singer, an athlete, a songwriter, a philanthropist, a screenwriter, an adventurer. He's everything. He's funny. He's inspirational. Hey, he's Dan Clark. He's changing the world one story at a time. Stay tuned.
It's an honor to be here tonight and participate on the program with Governor Herbert and her husband, Gary, both of whom are smart, amazingly successful, super passionate, strong as individuals, but stronger and more powerful as a couple, as an example to us as Utahns. As I travel the world, I'm so proud to be a Utahn because the reputation of the Herberts always precedes anywhere I go. Everyone seems to know that Utah's got the greatest economy, the best leadership, the best place to raise a family, and it's an honor to be here. It's also thanks. And now that I got through sucking up to them, let me get on with my message. It's an honor to also share the stage with a gentleman, José, Borjón. No hablo español, mi amo gordo grande, guapo feo. I honor the Hispanic community. I honor anyone from the Latino world because of your emphasis on families, and that's why we're here to honor and acknowledge the significance of families. I loved what Mrs. Herbert said as she concluded her remarks, that there's nothing more important than being a parent. It's the single most important mission that we have, and in my mind, the mission of a parent is to prepare our children for a world they recognize. Sounds pretty simple, and it can be if we understand that there's no science to raising significant children. There's no science to strengthening families. But in my mind and in my life, there is an art to raising significant children. There's definitely an art to raising significant and organizing and developing strong families. And it obviously begins with honest communication, because we know what happens when there is not honest communication. Two neighbor ladies have been friends forever, and they have this row and this huge blow up, and they refuse to speak to one another for 6 months. And one day they inadvertently run into each other at the curb, and they decide to put their childish ways aside, bury the hatchet, kiss and make up, and renew their friendship. And as they return to their homes, this woman goes into her family room. She's looking out the window, and in the back of her home, in the backyard, is her dog with something in its mouth. She goes out to investigate, and wouldn't you know it, her dog has the neighbor lady's rabbit in its mouth, and it's shaking it back and forth, and she thinks, oh no, after 6 months of feuding, we finally patch up our friendship, and now my dog kills the neighbor lady's rabbit. What would you do? She took the dead rabbit into her home. She took out some soap and water, washed it up, cleaned it up, took out her blow dryer, fluffed back up the fur, and then tiptoed back across to her neighbor lady's backyard and put the dead rabbit back in the rabbit hutch. 30 minutes later, she hears this blood-curdling scream. Ah! She goes out to investigate. She says, what's wrong? Her neighbor lady says, oh my gosh, our rabbit died 2 weeks ago. We buried it in the garden, and now it's back in its cage. We all have a tendency to want to circumvent the whole and complete truth when it comes to relationships. We think we're going to offend someone, so we hold back. May I just give 3 suggestions on how we can guarantee that we have honest, truthful relationships in every one of our relationships, especially in the relationship between a parent and a child, which obviously is the single most important thing in our lives, and why we're here tonight to honor and signify. In my time that I have, I want to just give 3 suggestions of how we can maintain these truthful relationships that really are at the heart and soul of parent-child relationships. The first of 3 I call mutual respect and support. It's basically we honor one another's opinion. And yet, how many of us know that's a truism, and yet we blow it as parents? How many of us have tried to choose our children's friends? Are we not all guilty? And what happens when we try to choose our children's friends? It forces them to have 2 sets of friends. Those whom they really hang out with, and those who they feel comfortable enough dragging home and parading through our living room for our approval. What would happen if we understood that mutual respect and support will keep us from going there ever again? And mutual respect and support is based on one quote: the only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is. We have to go where they are physically and emotionally. Only there can we gently invite them to grow, to improve, to accept our counsel based on unconditional love, that we want you to do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do, not just when we're around, but when we're not around. I wanted to find a perfect illustration of mutual respect and support. And I've taught this principle in leadership and in businesses across our world in 61 countries. The only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is. We have to go over there physically and emotionally. Only there can we gently invite them to buy. Essence of leadership, essence of sales. Does it not apply in our families as well? Does it not apply in the world of education and in our families? I would think so, and I would hope so, and I wanted to prove it true. So I tracked down one of my old high school teachers, Mr. Croft. He taught anthropology, so I never signed up for his class. The only thing I know about anthropology now is that we came from the goo, went through the zoo, now we're you, whoop-de-doo. So I never signed up for his class, but that did not keep Mr. Croft from engaging me and my friends and being that teacher 24/7, teaching us in the grocery store. He would always come to our games. As adults, I found out he didn't even like football. He didn't even like basketball or baseball, but he never missed one of my games. Why? He wasn't a football fan. He was a Dan fan. He was a Brad Morris fan. He was a Brian Thurgood fan. He went out of his way to always engage us and do whatever he could do to touch our lives. Whoa. So I sought him out. I said, Mr. Croft, I need an example from your classroom, from the world of education, to prove true, mutual respect and support, the only place from which a person can grow is where he or she is. He says, great, but in what context? I said, what's your toughest assignment as an in-classroom teacher? He said, it's always classroom discipline. I said, you mean positive discipline? He said, what's that? I said, discipline is to teach, not to punish. You can't increase a person's performance by making him feel worse. Humiliation immobilizes our behavior. Do you have an example? He lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh my gosh, Danny, I got the perfect story. He said he had this kid in his class, and for the first 2 weeks of school, he disrupted the entire class. He was a total terrorist. I said, so what did you do? Kick him out? He got this offended look on his face. He says, Danny, I've taught school for over 25 years, and I've never kicked a kid out. I've never sent a kid to the office. I said, Mr. Croft, come on, don't lie to me. I said, I've been in schools before where you walk in, and there's a long line of students out the principal's office, down the hall, out the door, past the 9A bus stop. They have tans. They've been out there for 4 months. What's wrong, kid? I got caught screwing goldfish into the pencil sharpener, and I'm on murderer's row. I said, you've never sent a kid to the office? He says, I can't understand it. How some teachers think that the principals and the superintendents have all the Band-Aids. He said, this is my territory. I am responsible for these kids, just as if they're my own. And if you don't agree, how would you like your kid to be kicked out and given up on? He had my attention. I said, so what did you do? He said, I couldn't give up on the kid. For 2 weeks, he researched, and finally, Mr. Croft discovered that this kid played in a rock and roll band. And Mr. Croft discovered that this kid's rock and roll band was playing this very Friday night in a smoke-filled honky-tonk redneck bikers bar out in the bushes somewhere. So Mr. Croft talked 5 of his fellow teachers into going with them so that he wouldn't be stabbed all by himself. Now visualize Mr. Croft. He always wore an Argyle sweater. His fellow teachers always wore Argyle sweaters. We called them the GQ crew. So Mr. Croft and his fellow teachers come strolling in the back door of this biker's bar. And sure enough, the heavy metal punk rock band's on stage doing their thing. Now, we've all seen this before. Lead singer, half his head shaved, carburetor stuck in his nose. 22 earrings over here, miniature towel rock over here. Looks like he fell down the stairs in the tackle box. You want to stop him? Hey, I'm sorry you got mugged with that staple gun. Can we talk on Saturday? And sure enough, they're in their heavy metal glory, and all of a sudden, they stop dead in their tracks. And through the reverberation system of the microphone, you overhear the bass player say to the lead singer, "Who are those 6 proctologists who just came in the back door?" Lead singer says, "Whoa, they're teachers from my school." And through the microphone, he says, "Hey, Mr. Croft, what are you guys doing here?" Mr. Croft says his heart starts pounding up into his neck. He's got cotton mouth. He can't even breathe. He can barely swallow. He said, "We heard your band was groovy, and we came to check you out." Obviously, a communication gap. A few chuckles on stage. Now he had more acceptance. "We heard your band was awesome, and we came to support you." The carburetor almost fell out of the lead singer's nose. But now, mutual respect and support. And the band cranked up their music, which to Mr. Croft and his teachers was nothing more than just noise. They only stayed 15 minutes longer. That's all the noise they could take. That was Friday night. Question. Monday morning, was this kid a discipline problem in Mr. Croft's classroom? No way. Was this kid a discipline problem in Mr. Croft's classroom for the rest of the school year? No way. Was this kid a discipline problem in other teachers' classrooms for the rest of the school year? Way. What's the difference? It's an old cliche I swore I'd never use on stage, but here it goes. We don't really care how much we know until we know how much we care. We don't care how much you know until we know how much you really care. If that's not a way to develop a relationship with our children, not expecting them to come to us, but going to them so that they know that we're not expecting them to live out our broken dreams by being an athlete or a dance star simply because we couldn't pull it off. The second suggestion to maintain these honest relationships, the art of strengthening families, I'd like to call engagement. Back in the 1980s, I was invited into the Reagan White House by Mrs. Nancy Reagan to take her Just Say No program to all 50 states. It was a positive choices program, which I thought was fascinating because originally we focused in on anti-drugs, and then we realized that it's a time management program. Instead of worrying so much about how to say no to alcohol, how to say no to drugs, how to say no to violence, illicit sex, if we simply say yes to something positive, we won't have time to do something negative, and our positive actions will say no for us. So between 1983 and 1989, I had an opportunity to speak to thousands and thousands of high schools in all 50 states to over 6 million teenagers. It all began because I went to the Utah State Board of Education, and Lila Bjorklund gave me 15 minutes on the program to explain my high school motivational assembly program. She introduced me to Warren Pugh, who was the Speaker of the House. He invited me to the Capitol building. I spoke in front of the Utah State Legislature. They voted unanimously to fund me to speak to every high school and junior high in the state of Utah between 1982 and 1983. I love Utah. I know where Tabiona is. I know how to say hurricane. I know it's Escalante. And when you're coming over the hill down into St. George, I know that that sign says Tokerville. We have the greatest state on our planet, and it was the catalyst for my whole entire speaking career. Now, where am I going with the second idea of initiating and sustaining these total, truthful, amazing, engaging relationships and communication with our children? During that same period of time, we had a suicide epidemic in North America, and it's starting to raise its ugly head again in our country. Do you realize Utah is one of the leading states in teenage suicides right now as we speak on this stage? What are we going to do about it? It's about engagement, my friends, and may I just share an experience that I think hits home and teaches a magnificent principle about the art of strengthening families, and it applies to all of us. I was flown into Plano, Texas, the Beverly Hills of Dallas. They had 6 suicides in their high school in one day, 7 in the same week. Some of you would remember that from the news in the 80s. I was flown into the shore of New Jersey, Ocean Township, Asbury Park, Long Branch. Several suicides in a day and a half. One of my 6 offices in the country was in Stamford, Connecticut, and the highest income per capita was always Greenwich, Connecticut, who led the nation in teenage suicides. I was flown into Dubuque, Iowa. The name of the high school will remain anonymous because this is being recorded. I was flown into town. This high school was a magnificent high school, 2,000 students. And I was flown into town with a woman by the name of Charlotte Ross from San Mateo, California, the national co-chairperson for suicide prevention. So she took charge. We came into the school. She took 1,000 students into the theater, and she did the left brain cognitive psychobabbling neurotechnical stuff. I took the other half of the student body into the gymnasium, and I did the right brain touchy-feely relational laugh and cry and stuff. We swabbed our audiences and repeated our performance to the best of our ability. And then at the end of the day, we invited in the healthcare professionals, the school counselors, and the school administrators, and we interviewed every single one of these students who had attempted suicide and survived. Every single one of them told us the reason why they wanted to give up on life itself, the reason why they wanted to quit, the reason why they wanted to complete their suicides was because they lacked commitment relationships in their lives. Do you? Do I? I wish I had time to poll the audience. Would you just answer to yourself the question, what is a commitment relationship? Would you agree that it's a two-way deal? If I say what I'm going to do and you say what I'm going to do, there's no commitment. But when you do what you say you're going to do, and I do what I say I'm going to do, a commitment is formed, and when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together. To deepen our understanding of commitment, let me introduce another word, love. I think about it a lot, love. How many of you are in love? Show of hands. How many of you are in love? This is amusing. I wish you could see the Herberts just as I did. I said, how many of you are in love? Mrs. Herbert raises her hand. She looks at the governor. He says, stinking your chain, sir. Do you agree? Do you agree that love is a commitment, not a way of feeling? Romance is not love. Romance comes from a Greek word that means erotic. So I don't even want to talk about it. But think about it in these terms. If I love you because you're beautiful, that's romance. If you're beautiful because I love you, that's real love. It's a value-creating love that inspires us to be the best that we can be. Yet how many of us confuse love, commitment with romance, emotion? What have we said our whole lives? Oh, I love her so much, she makes me feel differently than I've ever felt before. Oh, I love him so much, he makes me feel differently than I've ever felt before. So do breakfast burritos. If you think you're in love, just maybe you need a long, cold shower and a box of Rolaids. What's my point? I love you means absolutely nothing unless we back it up with action. Love is not a noun, it's an action verb. So the 3 most powerful commitment-oriented words in this world in any language are I need you. Regardless of what music and movies have massaged us into believing, the 3 most powerful commitment-oriented words in this world are I need you. Proof. I got into music in a very interesting way. I've written songs forever. Never had the courage to sing in public until one of my good friends decides he's going to get married. He phones me up, Clark, will you write a song for my wedding? I said, sure. He said, will you sing it? I said, no. In the next few minutes, he convinced me that we were best friends, that we went back a long ways, that it would be cool if I participated with him in his special day. He basically made me feel important. Think about that word for a moment. We all like to feel important. In fact, most of us try to act more important than we really are. That's why we have so many people driving around with trailer hitchers on their cars and they don't even own anything to pull. Like, wow, she's got 2 of them, must have jet skis and a boat. Follow her. I said, all right, I'll do it. I wrote the song. 2 days later, he phones me back. Clark, the band just called and canceled. Could you prepare about 40 or 50 songs and play for the whole wedding reception? I said, no. He said, I need you. What a jerk. Had he said, I love you, I'd have said, I love you too, man. Here's the number of a band. But he made me feel like I was not just good, I was good for something. That my little weird shaped puzzle piece really did fit, that I could make a significant contribution. I couldn't turn him down. I don't think any of you could have turned him down either. His wedding reception rolls around on the calendar. He makes a big deal out of my first little love song, gathers everybody around. I sat on my stool, sing my little song. Everybody's crying. They disperse, start to have their refreshments, start to socialize. I sang the first song out of the 40 or 50 songs that I'd practiced and prepared. And all of a sudden, the band shows up. Miscommunication. Now, I'm not foolish. I don't want to sit on a stool and sing all night. I want to eat like everybody else does. So I gladly helped the band set up all of their equipment. Now, you think about this for a moment. When I arrived at that wedding reception, I arrived with the attitude in mind that I was needed. I would have stayed till 4 o'clock in the morning if necessary. I would have waited tables. I would have wiped tables. I would have swept the floor. Someone spills, I wouldn't have waited for a custodian. I had ownership. Give me the mop. I would have cleaned it up. I would have sung 100 songs if necessary. I would have made some up. But the second the band shows up, realistically, I am no longer needed. So why hang around? And we can fool others all day long, but we can never fool ourselves. So why hang around? And I didn't. I left the wedding reception. That is the message coming through loudly and clear from young people across our land. And isn't it interesting? Truth is truth where error is found, on heathen or on whatever ground. It's true, and if it's true, it's always true. For decades, for centuries. Every single one of these students in Dubuque, Iowa, who had attempted suicide and survived, told us they knew they were liked, they knew they were loved, but they didn't believe they were needed. And when we don't feel like we're needed, why hang around? So the most provocative question I can ask you tonight as an opening speaker, with so many wonderful presenters after me, and you're in for a treat, to hear from Matt Townsend, who's a hero to me. The most provocative question I can ask you as your opening speaker, with all due respect to Mrs. Herbert, are you needed? And here's the kicker. Because of the society in which we live that most of us have helped create, we cannot afford to wait for somebody else to tell us or show us that we are needed. It might not ever happen. A couple of years ago, I spoke 202 times, all 50 states, 21 countries. And never once did anyone ever come up to me after my speech and say, how are you? They don't care. You probably don't either. So what am I supposed to do? Just go back to my hotel room and feel sorry for myself? Nobody likes me? Guess I'll just go eat worms. No, we have to do something on a daily basis to prove to ourselves that we are needed. So the kicker word in commitment relationships is to participate more, get involved. If you don't feel like you're needed at home, participate more, get involved. If your children don't feel like they're needed at home, is it too much to ask us to create environments wherein we can invite them to participate and prove to themselves that they're needed? If we don't feel like we're needed in our communities, participate more, get involved. If you don't feel like you're needed in our great state of Utah, participate more, get involved. We need to heal America, and the best way for us to do that is to get involved. And not stand on the sideline and complain or blame, but to get involved and to actually celebrate and first and foremost sympathize, empathize, and mourn with those who are mowed down in that tragedy in Las Vegas, Nevada. But then celebrate Americans, strangers, who covered up other strangers to protect them from being shot by a maniac. America still has more love than hate. And that brings up my third suggestion as I wind down my time with you this evening. I would suspect it's called example. May I just impose on you to watch me? Will all of you play this game with me and just do this with your fingers, please? Watch me as quickly as you can, touch your chin. There you go. I said as quickly as you can, touch your chin. Some of you are going to hurt yourself trying to recover before I nail you from stage. It's such a simple exercise, but it's so provocative and profound. We have to remind ourselves that people are watching. And one of the greatest lessons we can teach our children is through example, why they are watching. As I conclude, I just want to point out a bracelet that I've worn since 2005. I visited our combat troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, gone down range, as we say, 8 times to entertain our troops. I love our military. And in Bagram, Afghanistan, 2005, a member of the 82nd Airborne Army Ranger gave me this bracelet made out of his parachute cord, which is cool because I've never taken it off. It immediately dries when I get out of the shower. It immediately dries when I get out of the ocean. Doesn't matter. Has a little jump medal and miniature American flag and a combat insignia where we came in contact with the enemy. Stories for another day. I wear this to remind me that it's not enough for us to practice what we preach. We must preach only what we practice, especially if we're focusing on the art of raising significant children and the art of strengthening families. Because we're all public figures, because our children at least are watching us, from a military support perspective, it was not enough for me to just buy one of those little bows that says support our troops and put it on the side of a vehicle and feel like I'm doing my civic duty. I better take my commitment to another level. So I made a commitment a long time ago that every single time I saw an airman, a sailor, a Marine, a soldier in an airport, I would buy him or her a meal. What a drag. No one ever told me they don't hang out all by themselves. They're always in groups of 3, 5. When they find out it's free food, I hear a whistle in the men's room. 9 guys running out of the men's room in formation. Hey, 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 free Nathan's dogs, D5. The entire reason we go to the airport isn't just to stop that commitment to service before self. It's to keep it alive when we board the plane. I love Delta Airlines, the #1 airline on our planet. I usually fly first class. I always get a window seat. It's where I've written a lot of my books, a lot of my songs on the road. I've boarded this Delta jet. I'm sitting in a window seat, first class. They've served the beverage. And now the rest of the passengers start coming aboard the plane, and we've all seen it. There's always at least one passenger dragging that 411-pound carry-on bag down the aisle, holding up everyone else. And if you're curious like me, you usually can find 2 air holes drilled in the top. They stuck Aunt Shirley inside. They refuse to splurge for an extra ticket, so they're dragging her down the end. Takes them forever to stick her up into the overhead. So now there's congestion. That should just freak you out and fall over. I think, yeah, wow. Somebody really didn't like what he was talking about. First class, sipping my beverage. All of the passengers are stopped and stuck in the aisle, and stopped on my row as a soldier in full uniform. So I chat him up. How you doing? He says, I'm fine, sir. I said, are you coming or going? He says, I'm just coming back from the desert, sir. They're always so polite. I said, where have you been? He says, I've been in Baghdad for 15 months, sir. I said, I bet you're excited to see your family. He gets emotional. He says, I hope they're excited to see me. I said, guaranteed, bro, welcome home. I want to swap seats. He says, oh, no, that's not necessary. I said, what do you mean it's not necessary? It's the least I can do. Flight attendant overhears me. Mr. Clark, that's so nice of you. I said, what do you mean it's so nice of me? It's the least I can do. I'm going to swap seats. You give him anything he wants. Take good care of him. Give me your seat assignment. I'm going to the back of the plane to sit in your seat. I go to the back of the plane looking for a seat. Wouldn't you know it? He's sitting in a center seat between 2 chubby guys. Now, I played football for 13 years. I've lost 41 pounds since I got through playing ball. But I'm still 6'5", about 235. I show up. These 2 guys are looking up at me like, oh, no. I'm looking at them like, double no. Excuse me. I sit down. Oh, no. That's what's going to happen to every single one of us when we leave this beautiful barn this evening. We're all chipper. We're all positive. We're going to hear some of the greatest speakers on the planet. And when we walk outside, nothing has changed. We default, do we not? I'm sitting there squished, thinking, whoa, I'm so old I bend over to pull up my socks, and I think, what else can I accomplish while I'm way down here? I started remembering the nights I go to bed healthy and I wake up injured, and all I did was lay there. Is that starting to happen to any of you? You wake up, your hip's asleep, your foot hurts, you're like, hey, what's going on around here? Trying to stretch out in case something happens at 2 a.m. What allowed me to sit up and stop treating these men as objects in my way and start treating them as fellow human beings, knowing the same God who made you made me too? It was the memory of being downtown Baghdad when it was 141 degrees Fahrenheit. And on top of that, our soldiers, our Marines, our airmen, our sailors are wearing 85 pounds to 125 pounds of combat gear, running towards the sound of the guns while bad guys are trying to pick them off to keep them from returning home safely to their families while we're at the mall. There's justice in the universe. Because when I finally sat up and we had this wonderful conversation, about 4 minutes later, I look up and the guy sitting next to me comes wandering to the back of the plane. We get eye contact. I said, "What's up?" He said, "You made us all feel guilty." I said, "What happened?" He said, "The next soldier who got on board the plane, I gave him my seat." I said, "Hallelujah, let me help you find yours." And before we took off, 4 guys who had been sitting in first class were now sitting in the back of the plane where we should have been all along to pay tribute to these amazing men, in this case, who are willing to sacrifice their lives so that we may live. The story doesn't end. The next morning, I shower, shave, put on my coat, put on my tie, show up to the ballroom, and wouldn't you know it, the gentleman who introduces me is the CEO of that magnificent company. The gentleman who introduces me is the guy who was sitting next to me in first class. We hadn't had a chance to get acquainted. And as he introduced me, he said 4 of us in first class inspired one another to do what we could with what we had in whatever moment we were in to prove true that service before self is the secret to open, honest, trusting communications. As we tie a bow around our time together this evening, I believe that those simple 3 suggestions we can all do immediately when we leave this venue this evening. If we remember one 30-second vignette that ties a bow around everything that we're about and everything that the Herberts are about for us as Utahns. It's to illuminate this powerful word, support. And the illustration, hopefully, that we will remember, a mother encourages her daughter to come home as soon as school is over. The time comes, the time goes. 30 minutes later, daughter walks in through the front door of her home and her mother scolds her. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." She says, "Oh, Mommy, I walked my friend Sally home. She dropped her doll on the sidewalk. It broke all to pieces. It was awful." Her mother said, "So you're late because you stayed to help your friend pick up the pieces of the doll and put it back together again?" She said, "Oh, no, Mommy, I didn't know how to fix the doll. I just stayed to help her cry." Families are forever. If not, then what's forever for? It's been an honor and a privilege to be here. And being invited to speak forced me to think about the things that I've appreciated being married to my amazing partner and wife and our fantastic 4 amazing children who turned out pretty well simply because of my wife. As I depart, I'm so grateful that I'm friends with Art and Janie Brown, who graciously will give 300 DVDs of Strengthening Families tonight as their gift, proving true that they're also here with unconditional support. God bless Utah. God bless America. Thank God for the Herberts at this time in Utah's history, who single-handedly, through their example as professionals and especially as families, changed our lives forever. Thanks and have a good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Clark. Let's give him another round of applause. And the evening is just beginning. Up next, Kim Giles. She's the president and founder of the Clarity Point Coaching Academy, a master executive coach for 14 years. She's been featured on local and national television and radio, including Good Morning America, who named her one of the top 20 advice gurus in the country. In addition to authoring 3 books, she writes a syndicated advice column you may read at KSL.com. She's also a regular contributor on Forbes.com. Help me welcome to the stage, Kim Giles.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you. So why do we have bad parenting behavior on occasion? Why do we lose our temper and react emotionally? Why do we sometimes talk more than we listen? That bad relationship behavior that shows up in all of us from time to time happens for one simple reason. It happens because we get scared. And when we get scared, our focus is on us. Have you ever realized when you feel insecure that the focus is all about you? It is. And nobody triggers our fears more than our children, right? We're afraid all the time that we're failing as a parent. We get afraid that we look bad. We get afraid that we'll lose them. There's so many things to be afraid of. But the problem with parenting from fear is that it keeps the focus on you and your concerns and your worries. And we react and we say things and we do things that make us feel better, but not necessarily what makes our child feel better or what our child needs, right? I want to ground mine for the rest of their natural life because that would make me feel better, but it's not always what's best for them. So tonight, I want to talk about the biggest fear that gets us as parents, as spouses, in our families that causes this kind of behavior that's reactive and emotional and not always loving. And I want to teach you tonight how to get out of that fear so that you can really be the loving parent and spouse that you really want to be. Would that help? Okay, so tonight, I'm going to share with you a secret, a simple secret to get out of fear in your parenting. And it comes down to that there are two states you can parent from. You can either parent from fear, where your focus is mostly on you, or you can parent from a place we call trust and love. And in this place, you're not afraid. And you really can show up in a way that's focused on your child or your spouse or whoever else is involved. And this is simple when there's only two choices, right? I can be in fear, or I can be in trust and love. Now, what I want to teach you tonight is how to get from one state to the other. And in order to do that, we have to really understand our fear. So there is one fear that every single person in this room and every single person on the planet does battle with every day to some degree. And it's our deepest, darkest fear. It's the fear of failure. And we call it the fear of not being good enough. And you guys all are familiar with this fear because you feel it all the time. And I think it started when we were little kids, because the first thing that happens when you're a child is everybody starts saying, no, don't do that, don't be like that. You need to be more like this. And what are they really saying? That I need to be different than who I am to be enough? And then we start school, and the first thing you learned in school is that there's kids smarter than you and better looking and more athletic. And that fear just gets bigger. And I wish as an adult that I could tell my kids that I've grown out of it. But we haven't, have we? A matter of fact, as an adult, there's just a lot more levels on which we can fail. We can now be a terrible parent. We can fail at work. That fear is just huge. And every day that we experience that fear, it keeps us from showing up with love, because fear and love are like darkness and light, and they both can't exist at the same time in the same place. We can't have a room that's both dark and light. So we've got to learn how to get out of this fear so that we can be the love in the world that's really who we are. So, in order to teach you how to get out of that fear, I have to first teach you what causes it. The real reason that we're all afraid we're not good enough. And it comes from a very deep foundational core belief that we all have on the subconscious level. And that means it's a belief that we're not really consciously aware of. But it's in there. Now, I also want you to recognize the difference between a belief and a fact. A fact is something that doesn't change and that we know is true. A belief is an idea that we think might be true, but it could change, right? So this is a belief. It's not a fact, but a lot of us think it is. And it is the belief that your value is in question. That life is literally a test, and you have to earn your value. And we believe then that your value can go up and it can go down, right? If we could just lose weight or make more money or be a little more perfect, our value would go up. What is that? Awesome. Okay, that'll work. All right. Yeah, thanks, guys, for fixing that. You saved the day. Okay, so fear of failure is caused by the belief that you believe your value as a human being can change and that you have to earn it. And that if you could just do better, lose weight, make more money, your value would go up, and then you could finally feel good about yourself and not be afraid. But if you believe that your value can go up, you also believe that your value can go down. And that's where this idea that life is a test comes in, where we feel like every mistake we make docks our value, and it goes down. And we literally feel like we might be less than other people, which isn't truth, but it's a belief, and it's one that we all deal with. We have been taught to believe that our value is based on these 4 things. As a little child, you picked this up watching mom and dad. And what you learned is that your value depends on how good you look, how well you perform. Do you win the game? Did you get good grades? And it's affected by your property. As adults, what car do you drive? What house do you live in? We let all those things affect our value, how valuable we feel. And then the opinions of other people come into play. How much do we worry about what everybody thinks of us? And we let these things take our self-esteem up and down on a daily basis. And this isn't just happening to us as parents, is it? It's happening to all of our kids. And the main reason that kids get into trouble is because they're covering their own fear that they're not good enough. I know this from experience. I have a son that had a real hard-fought battle with drugs many years ago. And at the end of the day, when he finally really talked to me about what it drove him to drugs, it was all about self-medicating to cover his fear that he wasn't good enough every day. These are the same fears that all of us are battling. And this idea that your value is in question and can change based on these 4 things, it's what's causing the problem. Because as long as you believe that your value can go up and down, you also believe that some human beings have more value than other human beings. Because those 2 beliefs go together. And if you really think about it, that belief is the real cause of most of the problems on the planet. All the war, the terrorism, the racism. At its heart, it's all about groups of people that think they have more value than other groups of people. This idea that human value can change is what's causing all of these problems. And as long as you still believe that your value can change, you will never feel good enough. Because no matter how hard you work, how much weight you lose, or how much money you make, you will find other people that have done more on one of those levels. They've done more, and you will still always feel like you're not enough. So I'm going to tell you tonight the secret to getting out of that fear so that you can show up in love. It lies in changing that core belief and actually deciding that for you, human value is not on the line. Life is not a test. It's a classroom. You know the difference between a test and a classroom? In a test, every mistake you make counts. It docks your grade and you can't get it back. But in a classroom, it's learning time. And the teacher might give you problems to solve, and if you get it wrong, you can just erase and try again. And your grade isn't affected. And everybody in the class has the same value. We have found that if you will change that one belief in your mind and choose to see all human beings as having the same infinite, absolute value, and when we make bad choices, they're very good lessons, but they don't change your value at all. If you decide to see every human being as having the same worth, then nothing that you do, a bad hair day, a big mistake at work, crash your car, you still have the exact same value and you always will. We can literally take the fear of failure off the table if we choose to see all human beings as the same, having the same value, and we've got to teach this to our kids. A matter of fact, there's 2 really important things. If you want this to change your life and to get the fear of failure out of your home and your family, you first have to give up judgment. Now, what this means is you can't see other people and gossip and speak bad and cast them as not enough or worse than you. Because the minute you do that, you're giving power to the old belief. You're giving power to the idea that people can be not good enough, that they can be less. And as long as you hold on to that belief and continue with that track, you'll always feel that you're not enough too. So we have to give up judgment. Number two, we've got to start making this the language in our home every day, so that when a child drops a plate and it shatters into a million pieces in the kitchen, the first thing they hear from you is, it's okay. It didn't affect your value. You've got the same value. When the kids win the soccer game, make sure you remind them that they still have the same value as the kids on the other team. When they lose the soccer game, make sure you tell them that that didn't affect their value. Now, I have to tell you, in my home with my 7 kids, this has become the language in our home all the time. And every time Mom does something stupid, dings the car, the first thing they say is, Mom, don't worry, that didn't affect your value. They got it. And if you will make that the language in your home, that's funny, I dropped that. That didn't affect my value either, just so you guys know. If you will make this the language in your home, I'll make you a promise, because we've been teaching this for the last 15 years, and it is life-changing. It takes everybody's fear out of the picture. And we can see all of these interesting experiences and adventures with our kids as amazing lessons, but we all know we're good enough at the end of the day. And this will change the way you show up for your kids, because when they make a mistake, the first thing that happens with us is that fear. And if we can step back for a minute and remind ourselves that we're all okay, these are just lessons in the classroom of life. But I'm not failing as a parent. I don't have to be a perfect parent to be the perfect parent for my child. I believe those kids were sent to your home because whatever mistakes you make are going to screw them up in exactly the way they're meant to be screwed up. It's a perfect classroom. The universe knows what it's doing. And no matter what happens in your home, as you grow and learn, and as they grow and learn, you still have the same value as everybody else. Now, really, the magic of this is, can you imagine if all of us embraced this principle? If we all chose to see every human being, no matter their color, their sexual orientation, their race, their religion, everybody is having the same exact value, we could not just change our families, we might be able to change the world. Are you with me? Thank you. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Wow, just a different way to think, right? And it just changes everything. All right, our next speaker, Steve Wright. His successful social cause work has garnered national recognition from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, National Association of State Alcohol Drug Abuse Directors, and from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Steve has spearheaded and consulted such campaigns as ParentsEmpowered.org, Way to Quit, and several state and national prescription drug awareness campaigns. I'm sure you've seen his work. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Wright.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what an honor to be on this stage. It's really hard to follow Dan Clark, let's be honest. That guy's been to space and he flies fighter jets. I mean, there's little that I can do that's going to top that. But to be part of this conference and to stand here and be part of this initiative to motivate parents in an effort to strengthen Utah families, that is amazing, okay? I am deeply honored, and I have to show my appreciation and my recognition for Mrs. Herbert. I've said in many meetings with her discussing different strategies and approaches to this campaign, and it's hard-pressed to sit next to somebody who cares as much as Mrs. Herbert does about the parents and about the families all across Utah. So I show my great appreciation and say thank you for what you're doing here in the state of Utah. Now, I have to admit, When I was preparing to speak at this conference, I was sitting in my office at home, and I was typing up some notes, and my 5-year-old comes walking in. And he looks at me and he says, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm preparing for a parenting conference." So I took the opportunity and I said to him, his name's Hudson, I said, "Hudson, tell me what makes a good dad." This is the words of a 5-year-old. He stops, he kind of looks at me, he scratches his chin, and he goes and sits on my couch. And I'm like, okay, he's dragging this out. This is going to be bad. And he looks at me and says, "Dad, they have to know how to make good Lego castles." So that's it. That's my advice to you tonight. You go home, you make Lego castles, and you're going to be set, okay? I've spent the last 12 years working on a project for the state of Utah aimed at reducing and eliminating underage drinking. And tonight, I've been asked to share a little bit about that project and what we can do as parents to better understand this issue and what we can do to combat the dangers and harmful effects of underage drinking. So I ask you today to listen to this message and find out what we can use in our own lives to take back and help set these clear rules to keep our kids alcohol free. So first of all, where are my grandparents in the room? Raise the hands. My grandparents. This is the group that doesn't hesitate to raise their hands. They're very proud to be grandparents because in their minds they think, I'm done. I made it. I made it. My kids are out of the house. I've moved on. I asked my dad when he became a grandparent, I said, "What's the greatest thing about this?" And he says, "You're not asking me for money anymore." I thought, that is the truth. Okay, next one. Where are my parents who have kids under the age of 5? Raise their hands here. This is the group that tiredly did this. I have a 2-month-old right here with my wife. She's sitting here rocking the baby seat as we talk tonight. This group, I did not realize when I became a parent that you give up all sleep, period. Nobody told me that. So we don't sleep anymore, okay? Where's my next group? Those who have teenagers at home. Where are you guys? These are the ones that are on their phones and they're like checking up on their kids, like, "What are you up to? Are you home yet? Because I told you to be home by now." They're probably over the corn maze waiting for the fireworks to go off, so we got to go join them soon, okay? This group, I'll be honest, I'm scared to join this group. All the challenges that these kids face, can I have my kids prepared for it? I don't know. Can I have them prepared to say no to underage drinking? I don't know. So I tell you, when I started this campaign, I sat down with a group of individuals here in the state of Utah, prevention and specialists, and I said to them, "You want to do what?" They said, "We want to eliminate underage drinking in Utah." And I got to tell you, I thought they were crazy. I said, we're Utah. We don't even have alcohol here. Why are we focusing on this? And they educated me. They shared with me a few facts that I want to share with you guys tonight to help me realize that underage drinking in Utah is a problem. And we have areas across Utah that rival those numbers of national cities. Okay? One of these they shared with me is they told me this right here. They said binge drinking in Utah begins as early as 6th grade. 6th grade. How old is a 6th grader? 11, 12 years old? One person's like 16. Yeah, sorry about that. They got held back a little bit. That's okay. 11, 12 years old. This is in Utah. Then they told me this. They said 31% of kids who said they had been drunk last year had parents who believed their children were non-drinkers. We're just not aware of what's happening. Then they told me this. 59% of Utah parents are unaware that 6th graders are drinking. And then they told me this. Kids drink to get drunk, which leads to alcohol killing more young people than any other drug. It's a serious issue. It's something we as a community need to change. And so we've accepted the goal here in Utah to eliminate underage drinking. Now, how do we do this? It's going to take all of us, every single person in this room, plus some, to truly drive down these numbers. We now know that alcohol can wire the teens' brains for addiction. The most compelling fact to move any parent to action is to know the impact that it's going to have on the developing teen brain. Because something magical is happening in our teenagers. There's 2 times that we go through rapid brain development in our lives. One's at birth, my little 2-month-old down here, still asleep, right? Okay, we're good, okay? And again during their teen years. So there was no way that we would ever hand a can of beer to a baby, an infant. We would not do the same thing to our teenagers because they're going through that same level of rapid brain development. as we'll find out in this video.
Good guy or a bad guy? Was he a hero or was he a villain? One reason he might be a hero.
You have 3 minutes to complete your midterm.
Underage drinking can interfere with a child's education, even when sober. New research shows alcohol can permanently impair memory and learning capabilities in a teen's developing brain. Know the facts. Visit parentsempowered.org.
Question for the audience. Let's try this. What percentage of kids who begin drinking before age 13 will be alcohol dependent? I just got an answer from Abby V&S, who's like sat next to me for 10 years. Thanks for spoiling it, Abby. 45%. Now, my next question, if you've worked with me in the last 10 years, you can't say anything. Jeez. All right, 45%. That's alarming. Heads or tails, your kid drinks before the age of 13, they're coming up alcohol dependent. That is a scary statistic. Let's try this one. What percent of teens who drink before age 15 will try other illicit drugs? Yell it out. 80, 90, 60, 70, 65 plus 2? 67. Our governor's good with math right here. 67%. All these other issues that surround us that threaten our kids can be eliminated if we can eliminate underage drinking. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, I have good kids. My kids won't experiment with underage drinking, either because of religious or moral beliefs or social boundaries or whatever those are. But I'm here to tell you, every kid will face this decision. And are they prepared to say no?
Not every kid will be perfect. Not every kid will make the team. Not every kid will stay healthy. Not every kid can get a 4.0. Not every kid will get asked to prom. But every kid will be faced with the decision to try alcohol. Is your kid prepared to say no?
Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always being there.
So a lot of times I show these commercials and I hear from parents, oh, that's great. My kid needs to see that. Okay? I'm not talking to your kids. I don't want to talk to your kids. I'm here to talk to parents, okay? We did a very interesting study. We sat down with a whole group of parents and we said, tell us, draw a picture of your child and then all the different influence in your kids' lives. And here's what Utah parents drew. They drew themselves, then their friends, then the teachers, the media, and they put themselves last on this list. Okay? As a Utah parent, I was disheartened with this information. So I kicked them all out of this room, and I pulled their kids together, and this is what their kids drew. They drew themselves, and then they drew their parents right next to them. Parents were the number one reason why kids were going to say no to underage drinking.
You have good kids, and they have good friends. But in Utah, by the 8th grade, 1 in 4 kids have experimented with alcohol, and 1 in 10 are regular drinkers. Which means your kids are likely more exposed to alcohol than you think.
I've got more if you guys want one.
Even good kids need their parents' help to stay alcohol-free. To learn more, visit parentsempowered.org.
So here is a staple issue that we have to deal with as a community. This is not an issue for just parents. This is an issue for our entire communities. It's a community problem, so it needs all of our support. I'm not out there just protecting my kids from underage drinking. I'm out there protecting all of our kids. And the same goal is for all of us here. We collectively work together. Now, parents ask me, how do I do this? How do I keep my kids alcohol-free? And it comes down to 3 things, what I call the triple strength proven parental skills. Okay? Say it with me. Bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. Okay? This is what it comes down to. We want to bond with our kids, okay? We know research indicates that children are less likely to drink when their parents are involved in their lives, and when children and parents feel close to each other, family conflict and lack of bonding increases the risk of drinking. Here's a really interesting finding. If we have dinner with our kids, or meals in general, 5 to 7 times a week, they are 33% less likely to get involved in underage drinking.
Why do we gather around the dinner table for life's important moments? It's the place where families come together, where stories are told and memories are made that last a lifetime. Dinner isn't just where food happens, it's where family happens. Research shows teens who regularly eat as a family are 33% less likely to use alcohol or illicit drugs.
When parents lead, kids succeed. For more information, visit upliftfamilies.org.
Okay, the next of these, once we bond with our kids, it's all about boundaries, establishing these rules. Now, growing up, one of the rules that was set for me when I was 16 years old is my dad said, well, you have a curfew. On weekends, I want you home before midnight. And so one time I'm out with my friends, and I look down at my watch like any 16-year-old, and I look down and I think, well, it's 12:05. I've got 10 more minutes. So I push it, right? And by the time 12:15 hits, I said, well, I better start heading home. I jump in my car and I'm heading home. And you got to remember, I'm 16 years old, so I am smarter than my parents. And I get to our house, and we live at the bottom of this long hill, and I put the car in neutral, and I turn off the lights so I can roll into the driveway, and nobody can hear me coming. And I sneak in, and I tiptoe out. And it's a proven fact that if you're late, the door always squeaks when you open it. So I open up this door, and I hear this, and I peek in, and what do I see? Pitch black. I'm home free. So I close the door and I sneak around the corner of the living room and I walk in and I look over and I hear this. And here's my dad sitting on the couch in his bathrobe. And he looks good. And he looks at me and he's like, do you know what time it is? And I was like, my watch broke. How convenient. And he says, that's okay. And he reaches behind the couch and you know what he pulls out? He pulls out a snow shovel. And he says, because you're late, here's the snow shovel. You have to clean everybody's driveway before you go to bed tonight. And I lived in one of those big cul-de-sacs. So I went outside and I shoveled snow for hours. I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning by the time I finished shoveling all my neighbors' driveways. I came inside, I was cold, I was wet, I was tired. I crashed on my bed. An hour later, my dad walks in with the snow shovel. And he says, hey, it snowed more. I was back out shoveling more snow. So my question to you guys, was I ever late again? Yes, I was late so often that my parents, my neighbors would line up and say, hey, be late. But the props I give to my dad is he was at the door with the snow shovel every single time I went out. And eventually, my 16-year-old brain matured, and I was able to make good choices and come home on time. These rules are super important to keeping our kids alcohol-free. They need to know what our clear rule is and our expectation.
Come on, it's just one drink.
Call me if there's alcohol. And because your brain is still developing, that's why you can't drink underage. So if you're ever offered alcohol,
I'll say no and call you to come pick me up.
Your child's future depends on the rules you set today.
The very last one I want to share with you guys, which may be one of the most important and one of the most challenging as Utah parents, is monitoring. We need to ensure our kids reside in an alcohol-free social environment, which is getting harder and harder than ever. We know that we have to live in this digital age. We need to keep up with them on their social media platforms, engage in their activities, and ensure that these kids understand that we are committed to keeping them alcohol-free. I have one more video I want to show you guys that helps stress this point, that monitoring can be such a vital part of our kids' lives in keeping them healthy and successful.
Dude, we should get wasted. Nah, man. My mom's been totally on my back about that.
Oh, come on, dude. How is she gonna...
I can hear you, dude.
Keep on your kids about not drinking. Set clear no alcohol rules early.
Parents, this is the big picture. If a child can get through age 21 without smoking, abusing alcohol, or using illegal drugs, they are virtually certain never to do so. I know, committed collectively together, we can eliminate underage drinking. It's going to require all of us working together to change the social norm. And I'm committed, and I hope you too are committed to seeing the end of underage drinking in Utah. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Utah Hispanic Dance Alliance. Another round of applause. All right, are we ready for more? I know I am. I'm busy jotting down notes backstage and trying to remember all these amazing things I'm learning tonight. All right, when it comes to parenting, Nicholine Peck is a worldwide phenomenon and a leader in this field. Her proven system based on 4 simple skills transforms even the most out-of-control teenagers and homes from chaos to calm within days. She's an international speaker, author, mentor, former foster parent, and she is president of the Worldwide Organization for Women. Nicholine spends most of her time at home with her husband and 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, Nicholine Peck.
So I have to warn you, I'm going to tell you a story that is definitely the most embarrassing moment of my life, to tell in front of an audience anyway. So when I was 14 years old, I had a fight with my mom, and it was a really bad fight. In fact, it was one of those that probably had too much drama in it. It could have been on the TV, I would bet. Anyway, I asked my mom if I could go somewhere. And my mom told me no. We were standing on the steps in the front of our home. She was a little bit above me, and I was looking up at her, and she said, no, you can't go to this particular thing with your friend. And I said the rudest thing I could possibly think of. And I guess I'll tell you that I know there's a few children in the room, don't ever say anything like this, but I said, what is it, Parent PMS Week? I did not make that up as a super clever, cutting remark. I actually heard that remark from my friend's mother talking about my mother. And I felt it was valid to say at that time. When I said that, my mother looked at me and she struck me. And she said, "Don't you ever talk like that to me again." And I looked up at her as defiant as I could. And I struck my mother. And I said, "Don't you ever hit me again." What a horrible thing. Then that night my dad came home. Let me just say, there was another hit that happened. I don't ever remember my parents hitting, ever. But I was at a point where I'm sure I was giving them all of the gray hairs that they had in their heads. I'm sure they were praying nightly that somehow I would turn out to be okay. I was entitled. At that moment, with that one argument, I felt they didn't understand me. I felt like I had a need to be with my friends. It really felt like a need. That's what an entitlement feels like, is a need. So how did I get this feeling of this need? Did my parents promote my entitlement? My parents believed in raising character children, positive development, that we would be emotionally strong children. We were a good, God-fearing family. How did I turn that way? Well, the one thing that made me turn out that way, as far as I can tell, is something they completely unintentionally did. And that was allowed me to be with my friends all of the time. I was with my friends at school, and then I would come home and I was with my friends more. And then I would call my friends on the phone, and I would stay talking to them until late hours into the night. I was socially groomed to put my parents first. Not my parents, excuse me, my friends first before my family. And what happened was entitlement. So what is entitlement? To be entitled is to be dignified in some way, to get some sort of title. That's what it means. So a king or a queen, a president, a governor, they all have a title, right? There's titles in our community everywhere. In our religions, there's rabbis and priests and pastors and bishops. We have doctors and professors and teachers. We have lots of titles in our community. In our homes, we also have titles. We have mother and father and grandmother and grandfather and aunt and uncle. Those are all titles, and we put those prefixes before their name or call them that title instead of their name. Children do not get title. They never have. You don't say, "Child Porter, come here." We don't say that, "Child Jessica, get your shoes." And we don't just say child because, again, they have a name. We just call them the name. That's it. But in our society, children have become entitled. Now, when a person is entitled in our society, whether they're a mother or a father, a pastor or a president, they get certain perks that go along with that title. Our children are being programmed, engineered actually, to think that their life is about perks too. So what does entitlement look like? We have to ask ourselves. A lot of people, when they think of entitlement, they think of stuff. In fact, I bet you if I said, what is the one thing that most youth want nowadays? That in most of your minds, a little square thing that looks kind of like a computer that sticks in your pocket would probably be the first thing that pops into your mind. A cell phone. That's what everybody wants. It's a thing. But entitlement doesn't stop at just things. It's also a type of a mindset nowadays where people feel like they deserve certain treatment and such. It used to be in days gone by when most of us were raised that we earned stuff and we earned respect. And nowadays, people demand stuff, and they demand respect. They've turned the American dream on its head. The American dream means that we work and we earn, and we have all of the potential to do so. So what does it look like when a person is entitled? That child might take their phone to bed. That child might have it with them all the time. They might always have little bud things in their ears. They might say, I'm bored all the time. I don't like that. I don't want that. I don't want to wear that. They might bully other people. Bullying is on the rise. I don't know if you've known that. Notice that. The more we talk about bullying, the more bullying there is. Have you noticed that? I'm not sure it's working, to be quite honest. Sometimes I wonder if people are being bullied not to bully, and that's just sometimes creating more bullying. We actually are having this problem with demanding certain behaviors of certain people, and the only people who have the right to demand or instruct certain behaviors of their children are the parents. Those are the only ones, and sadly, they have entitlement too, and they are not necessarily stepping up to the challenge. Passive parenting, letting them grow out of it, not fixing it, not being deliberate, is entitlement. Being aggressive and cruel and manipulative is also entitlement. There are so many things I could explain that put parents and children both in this entitlement boat, and then we have expectations that draw our relationships into a trap. So, I want to share with you as quickly as possible, and I promise you it's going to be quick, so take notes, 10 keys for raising unentitled children and youth. Number 1, establish proper roles. This is so important. When I wrote my first book, Parenting a House United, years ago, back in 2009, I assumed everyone understood roles. I assumed they understood what a mother was. Not what she did, not who made dinner, but what a mother was, what a father was in the life of that child. And I assumed that people understood to teach their children what it meant to be a 15-year-old son or a 7-year-old daughter. What is the role that they have? But you know what I found after years and years is people don't understand roles anymore. There's a kind of confusion, a loss of identity within our cultures, and it's starting in our families. So number 1 is roles. In fact, I wrote a whole book about it called Roles, so that I could help people understand that. Number 2, deliberately plan your family culture. Decide on purpose. What type of a family are we going to be? How are we going to solve problems? What skills are we going to have and develop? How are we going to think of each other? And where do we see our family going? In 20 years, what will we turn out to be like? In 2009, the BBC asked me to be on a documentary for them. And it became the most watched episode ever on the BBC. A family from Tooele, Utah. Imagine that. And do you know what they saw? They saw a family who was deliberate. A family who was authentically them and hadn't been taken over by pop culture yet. And it amazed the world. You can watch that on teachingselfgovernment.com. If you click the video tab, you can see that program. Number 3, learn self-government. So our whole society was established on self-government. It is a family principle. What it means is that a person is able to understand the cause and effect in any given situation and then possesses a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control them, which means they're in a constant state of self-assessment. And how does this happen? The parent has to teach the assessment, which means that the parent deliberately decides, what skills does my child need to have? And how am I going to correct them? What skills do I need to have to correct them when things go wrong? Number 4, Skills. The particular skill I would like you to think of is accepting a no answer. So I teach 4 basic skills to parents so they can teach them to their children. Everyone needs to know them. These 4 skills take care of 99% of all behavior problems. They are following instructions, accepting no answers, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. But accepting no answers is huge. A person will never be able to conquer themselves until they have learned to give themselves a no answer. And the only way they learn to do it is if their parents give them a no answer too. There are 4 steps to accepting a no answer. You look at the person. You keep a calm face, voice, and body. You say okay or ask to disagree appropriately. You do the task immediately, and then you check back. And the other skill that's so vital to not be entitled is disagree appropriately. Because when a person disagrees appropriately, they state that they understand your point of view, and then they share their point of view, and they do it all with calmness and security, and they listen to what you have to say as the parent, and then they drop the subject. Those are skills that people need. I wish I could go into more detail there. Number 5 is stop out of control behaviors. It's absolutely imperative that parents see themselves as the ones who stop out of control behaviors, not the ones who put up with out of control behaviors, okay? We have an epidemic that I've noticed lately. I go places and people have their little children climbing other people's bookshelves, scaling all kinds of things, and creating havoc, quite frankly. And I look at this and I think, when I was a child, that would never have been okay. And it's not because my parents were stuffy. It's because my parents taught me how to be properly social. In our world that is obsessed with the social, literally obsessed with social interaction, I hope we do not forget that the key place to learn social is in our homes. And parents teach it. Don't let them go wild. And when they're really struggling and going completely out of control, get some help. Get some skills that you need so that you don't go out of control too. Number 6, develop a work culture. Samuel Smiles, one of my favorite authors from the 1800s, in his book Character said, "Work is the antidote for a sick character." It is true. We live in a society of ease and luxury. We don't work very much anymore. It's too easy to just go out to eat all the time. By the way, that's sort of an entitled behavior. We need to teach our children to work, which means we have to learn to love work again. If it's always, well, we have to get our rooms clean and then we can go do something good and something fun, then our children will learn to hate work. Work is one of the number 1 things that builds confidence in our children. Number 7, govern digital devices. If you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember this one thing. You're not bad if you tell them they don't get one yet. This thing has the power to control them, to script them, to groom them. Don't let them have it until they already have the power to control them. It will be too soon. I see it time and time again. Those little things that are so cool are the demise of the family relationships. We have never raised children ever in the history of the world on a steady diet of digital stimulation. It is a social experiment. We don't even know where it's going. Be so careful. My children don't get iPhones until they're 18 years old. And they've been self-governing since they were babies, or working on it at least. We have a kid phone that they use if they have to go babysitting or if they're going to drive somewhere. And it's a dumb phone. It flips and it can't do any tricks and not even pictures. And that's what they get. Number 8, less friend time. This is huge. Did you know 10 years ago the worry was have your kids see their friends less? Less friend time, less friend time. Now everybody says less screens, less screens. Have them play with their friends so they don't do screens. Do you see how the bar has dropped? All of the friends are happening on the screens now. Less friend time, less friend time. Be careful about that. Number 9, meet as a family often. Discuss openly as a family group. Have good, productive family meetings and activities to strengthen your relationships. Without a good relationship, they will always see everything you teach them as a manipulation, as a power struggle, instead of as your role to teach them and to nurture them. And finally, number 10 is have a tone of calmness. I could go into that for an hour. To be calm, you must have self-government over yourself. There's skills you have to learn. How to be calm when somebody else isn't. How to help them get calm without losing your calmness at the same time. When you are calm in your parenting and in your talking to them, it creates an environment of safety. And with safety comes service and gratitude. If your family is serving and continually grateful to each other, then you know you're doing pretty good, and you're probably not as entitled as the next people down the street. We must stop ourselves from being entitled first, entitled to yell at them, entitled to stress out, entitled to everything else, and then we can change their hearts. Learning self-government is all about having a change of heart, about wanting to be a different person in the world and for our families. And when we conquer ourselves, we will give them the strength to conquer all that is being thrown at them in these days. God bless.
Thank you, Nicholine. All right, our last speaker of the evening, Dr. Matt Townsend. He's known as one of America's top presenters in the field of human relations and development. He completed his bachelor's and master's degree in the field of communication with an emphasis in conflict resolution. Wouldn't that come in handy? His second master's degree and PhD is in the field of human and organizational systems. Matt is featured daily on the Matt Townsend Show. You may have heard him. Sirius XM Channel 143, BYU Radio, and weekly on KSL Television Studio 5 with Brooke Walker. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Matt Townsend.
Ow! Thank you, Amy. How many of you love Amy's boot? She's sporting a boot. Did you guys know the governor's here? I know. The First Lady brought him. Where are they? There they are. Good to see you. By the way, if you want some dirt, they were on my show. And we talked about everything. We talked about raising their difficult children. Some of them are right here and right back there. We talked about some amazing stuff, and I'm honored. I'm so honored to be here. I really am. Everyone's like thinking, why would Matt be talking about anxiety? And it all started when Mrs. Herbert started talking about putting worms in alcohol. And it reminded me of when I learned to swim in the Tooele pool. Tooele was brought up earlier, and I learned to swim. Actually, it was just controlled drowning, is what we called it in my therapy sessions. And what we found out was that the teacher would just drop us in the pool. And I felt like the worm in the water. So it's not funny. And I wish you hadn't brought it up. I'm just kidding. Hey, by the way, there may be fireworks, but you all know, you know what, when you hear a firework, you know what that means? An angel just got its wings clipped. It's like a bell, but it's the opposite. It's just, bam, clip those wings. So here's the deal. We've got 2 hours to wrap this up. And by the way, have they done a great job or what? Give them a hand. Woo! And Amy, did you see an Amy coming out with the big boot? I mean, you know how hard it is to walk out? Well, I do. Let me talk about it. Here's the deal. I've got very delicate ankles. Okay? Many in my family say I got Nana's ankles. And so a lot of times, this is actually where I knew that having a little bit of anxiety in my life was an advantage. Because some people think anxiety is a negative thing, but I'm going to show you today it's absolutely not. But what I realized was this. My wife and I were on a walk, and we do this a lot because we're super fit. Okay, that's rude. I don't know who you invite here, Mrs. Herbert, but they obviously aren't learning much. Not taking the tips home, apparently. So here's the dilemma. My wife and I are on a walk. This has happened 3 or 4 times. In fact, by the way, right in the middle of a burning house, right in front of a burning house, this happened. True story. And we're walking, and we just, we walk, but not a fast pace, just a good pace, kind of, like a good cardio-ish, maybe almost cardio walk. And as I'm walking, I twist my ankle, my delicate Nana-like ankle. And here's the deal. Nobody believes this. But when I say that I fell 100 feet, probably 150 feet, and lived to talk about it, they don't believe it. But this is the story. I fell 150 feet. Now, when you hear that, you think, what, off of a building? No, this is how it happened. Twisted my ankle, and once I twisted, all I did was I stepped on the side of the sidewalk, and then it twisted. And when it started twisting, I started falling. But my head said, no, we're not doing that. You know how embarrassing that would be? And because I'm so sensitive to my environment, as I would fall, my body said, speed up. Let's just outrun this. Let's just outrun it. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Like, you fall and just like, oh, spread eagle? I'm not doing that. There's a real house on fire, burning, the studliest men you've ever seen, saving lives. And Matt Townsend twists his ankle. Why are you laughing? So I twist it, and I start falling, and I'm going down, and everything in me and nature, gravity, is saying, we're taking you out right here. And my brain says, not going to do it. Speed up, speed up. So I start running. But as I'm running, I'm also falling. So with every step I took, I'd lose about an inch in altitude. And I started falling and falling. And then my body's like, faster, 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 Matt, faster. You can outrun this. And I was running on my itty-bitty, tippy toes as I was almost parallel to the ground. Then you reach the most magical moment of all falls. It's the moment you're like, it's not working. You're going to take it right now. But Matt, I want, when you hit, do not make that sissy grunt noise. Don't make it. Just take it like a man. It was humiliating. It was humiliating. And then all my sensitivities kicked in like, are people watching? Don't let the fire department come over. It's the last thing I need. I'll just drag my leg the rest of the walk. It doesn't even matter. But I always knew, and this is why you marry above you. Always marry above you. Because as I was prostrate on the ground, all my pride shattered. I rolled over on my back, knowing that my wife, Marty Priest Townsend, was right there. I knew she'd be right there, consoling me. And she wasn't. Instead, she was doing one of these. Okay, so I'm right here. And she ran up. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, this is affecting her more than me. And she's like, why did you do that? Why did you do that? What? Twist my ankle? Or run for 3 houses? I ran about a house and a half. And these are like half-acre lots, for crying out loud. Not only did I fall, but I was winded. I was winded from my fall, and I had worked up a sweat just from falling. Now you laugh because you're kind of rude. But, no, let's all be real. But the problem was, if that just happened once in my life, that would be bad. But it doesn't happen. It happened with me playing tennis about a month ago. Next thing I know, I'm going to get my wife's passing shot. Marty Priest Townsend with her passing shot. And I go to get it, and I thought I stopped. And then my Nana's ankles twisted in the wind, and down I went. And guess what my caring wife said? She does it over and over and over again. I've got bad ankles. And then I just went on a walk at BYU after my show. I always like to go on a walk because honestly, I don't like people, okay? I just want to get away from people. Leave me alone. I need some space. My ankles hurt. And I was walking, and I waved to a lady. It was neat. Somebody, I don't know if she recognized me or if she was like telling me to watch out for the pothole that I was about to step in. But she was like this, and I'm like, hey. And then I stepped right in the pothole, and you won't believe it, twisted my Nana ankle. Went down flat in the road. Try being me. Do you know how worried I was to come out here? Like, I don't even bend this leg because I don't even want to risk it. And then to boot, I got Amy in a boot. Braggart, showing like she's got an ankle boot. So I'm a little anxious. Honestly, I didn't know I was anxious. I actually never felt anxious. So here's what I did. I wanted to research what anxiety looks like. How many of you, don't raise your hand, not even you, Governor. Don't anybody raise your hand, but rhetorically, how many of you have felt anxiousness for a long enough period of time that it stopped you from doing something? It stopped you from being the best person you could be. It impacted you. And I started realizing, okay, now I've probably done that. In fact, I had a guy on my radio show talking about procrastination. By the way, his name, just ironically, based on today's talk, his name was Ferrari. His name is Dr. Ferrari from DePaul University. And he's talking about the fact that one of the biggest reasons we procrastinate really has very little to do with time management. A lot of times it's just anxiety. Or as Kim Giles was talking about, it's fear. And so I said, that's funny because I have 7 books I've been trying to write, kind of. And he's like, then he got right to it. So why aren't you writing them? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe my ankles, not sure. And he said, I bet there's some fear involved. Are you afraid of it? I'm like, yeah, I'm probably afraid of failing. And then he said, I bet you're afraid of succeeding. I don't know. But the Ferrari has spoken. And it changed me. And it also changed me watching my kids go through this. So I started researching, what does anxiety look like? Let me show you what I found on Googly. When you Google this, it's a really cool, some images come up. In fact, fascinating images come up. What does anxiety look like? That. So if you ever have your partner look like that, especially in the morning, they've got anxiety. Or that. I don't even know what's coming out of that guy's head, but it ain't pretty. That, somebody's hungry. That, don't ask. These are the pictures that come up when you see Google. When you ask Google about anxiety. Look at this. A little nail biter. Any of you bite your nails? Anybody bite your children's nails? How about that one? Little stress, headache. Anybody have that one? How about that one? A girl being squished in an elevator. That would scare anybody. How about that one? Poof. Up in smoke. Do you ever feel like your life is like that? Also, in the exact same search, this came up. I kid you not. It's a sign from heaven. It's a sign from heaven that apparently I have stress and I didn't know it, or anxiety and I didn't know it. Did you know that 25% of our children will suffer from anxiety from 13 to 18 years of age? 40% of women over their lifetime will have anxiety. 36% of the people that suffer from anxiety are only 36 are getting help. They're just quietly suffering. And so I had a kid, one of my beautiful children. We have 6 kids, 1 girl, 5 boys. We put 2 of them into kindergarten. It all went well. Life was good. We thought it was really simple. One of my kids went to kindergarten. We dropped him off, and he didn't want to go. He's not going. And we had never had a child like say, no, we're not going. So of course we're like, well, no, you're totally going. And we took him in and we left him, and then it turned into chaos. And it got so bad that he wouldn't go every day. He wouldn't go. He'd actually be fine. He's super happy. Then we got him in the van, and this was the greatest invention ever, because they had those vans you could just push a button. And the van, remember before when you had to actually use your hands to move a van door? Push the button, and the principal of the school, Dr. Visciarelli, would grab my beautiful boy and pull him out of the van. And then my wife would be like, see ya, and drive away. And it was a really beautiful kind of family moment. And we did this day after day after day. And then Dr. Visciarelli would give the boy some candy, take him into his office, love him, feed him, take care of him, and then take him into kindergarten. Eventually, over time, he weaned him off of the candy, and then eventually just got him to go to class. This boy, though, had anxiety, and they diagnosed him as having social anxiety, right? Or also generalized anxiety, which the abbreviation is GAD. Oh, GAD. And generalized anxiety and social anxiety, okay? So we realized he didn't like certain things. He didn't like school because the teachers don't know anything. We're going to show you how to kind of cut through this. This kid, by the way, eventually became a student body officer, but not by running, but because he knows how to play music. And so he made YouTube videos. And he found a way to get out this anxiety and this talent out of him by just playing music and making awesome videos that work. And then that actually got him a chance to be a student body officer as the tech officer. And then this kid, by the way, he also he performed at his graduation in front of 5,000 people with another singer and a whole choir, and he performed a solo and did all of these incredible things. But he had anxiety. This kid has anxiety. And in my head, I'm like, I don't like that word. My kid he's just different. He's special. He's amazing. He's incredible. By the way, when my son was practicing his musical number for his graduation ceremony, guess who showed up? Tapped him on the back and says, are you Tanner Townsend? And Tanner said, yes. And it was Dr. Visciarelli, the principal of his elementary school, who used to rip him out of the van. And he said, I told you I'd show up. And my son's like, now, who are you? No, he knew exactly who he was. He's a hero of ours. And I believe a lot of us in this room might have a little anxiety, and it keeps us from doing what we do best, and we can't allow that to happen. So let me talk about a few things, like, what should we call anxiety? Let me give you some language if you think your kids might have a little anxiety, okay? You might use some of these words, and some of them you might just think are great. First word we could call it is stress, right? We could throw that in there. We're waiting for the clicker to click. Speaking of stress, you can call it anxiety. What else could you call it? Stress. Anything else? Anywho, I call it a bunch of stuff, okay? I call it freaking out. I call it fear. I call it concern. I call it apprehension, unease. If your kid's got a really big vocabulary, perturbation. I suggest you don't use that one. That'll freak out the neighbors. Then there's agitation. You could say, son, you seem a little agitated, like our laundry. Or you can talk about how sensitive they are, which was one of the greatest lessons I ever learned. I may not even have anxiety, but I have really high sensitivity. You ever heard of high sensitivity? It's a pretty cool thing. We'll talk about it in a minute. Did you know that 20% of the animal population, so you pick an animal, like a giraffe, 20% of the giraffes pick up more information, like 4 times more data than the rest of the giraffes. 20% of giraffes notice 4 times more than the other giraffes. Do you know how hard it is to be a giraffe when no one else is noticing what's going on? That's called high sensitivity. And they're finding out that some people maybe aren't so anxious. They're just super sensitive to a lot of information. And ironically, it's about 20%, which is about the same amount of people that have anxiety. Isn't that weird? So is that weird that if I walk into a house and I have 4 times more or 4 times more information in my head, what do you think I'm going to feel? I'm going to feel anxious. I'm going to feel perturbed. I'm going to feel stressed and frustrated. Let's get back to some other words so I can show you the best words that I really like to use the most with my family and my kids. You can also use the word nervousness. You can use the word tense or tension. Here's another one that I love, freaked out, if you're okay with that. Then you can use the word wigged out. But my favorite of all favorites is just to say, hey, son, do you have dem dare jitters? Try that one on them because the kids love that. So I don't like to call it anxiety. So with my family, we call it worry. So when I see my son having a little anxiety moment, I actually say, son, it looks like you're worried. Looks like your worry's kicking in. I'd rather talk about worry than the word that some clinical diagnosis came from. Worry is what my son has. With me, I actually don't worry as much. I have a lot of this high sensitivity thing. Highly sensitive people, 20% of you in this room are high sensitive, and let me run you through some examples of that. When I was a little kid, I knew something was weird with me because I would look at Santa Claus. I will never forget this. Everybody loves Santa Claus. I sat on Santa's lap. I didn't sit on his lap because I walked up to him, and it was the mangiest Santa I've ever seen. And I was 4, but his beard didn't sit right. Right? It just didn't sit right. Like I could see down his beard. And his pants were worn out. And his little cotton gloves had little balls on them. And I could smell his Santa breath. See the census? And I'm like, my mom's like, sit on his lap, sit on his lap. And I'm looking at her like, are you crazy? Have you checked out his facial hair? This guy's not right. He's faking. And my mom's like, get up there, just get up there. I remember I was a little kid, my parents divorced, and my mom's like, I want you to go over and stay with our cousins, and they're going to take you hunting. Well, like, we're going to shoot an animal? And then all night long, I'm like, well, what about the animal's mother? And what about the animal babies? Did you know that humans are the only chronically stressed animals on Earth? We're so messed up. We are the only ones that are chronically stressed, except for those animals that live with us, sorry. Those animals are also stressed out. Everyone's stressed out, except the deer. The deer up in the pasture during hunting season. Do you think it's stressed? It's fine. It's fine. Until, bam, that sound. Then what does it do? What the? And it runs off, and it's out of there. But when it gets to the higher pasture, do you think it's like saying, was that the same guy that shot my dad? Was he wearing orange? Where are they? No, they just, when they get up to the pasture, what do? Hey, grass. They're back at it. But we would just go home and like, oh my gosh. Like, what did I do to him? See how our mind works? But we feel like we're the superior animal on this earth. Yeah, then you strap a deer with an orange vest, give him a shotgun. Let's see how you do. You just start running. Let's see how this goes. You'd be a basket case, and you'd have to think yourself through it, right? So it's all what I call the reframe. The reframe is very simple, and the way my mind works, I'm a very, 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 very simple person. I like Diet Coca-Cola beverages. If I take a Diet Coke can and I shake it, I'm going to create a lot of pressure and stress, right? If I put that can by your face and open it, what's going to happen? You'll feel the pressure. Now watch what's so weird. If I take that exact same can and I put that exact same amount of fluid in a 55-gallon drum, seal it, and shake it, you have to shake it like this. And when you shake it, and I put that drum right by your head and open up the top, what's going to happen? Pretty much nothing. What changed the pressure? We call it in my world a reframe. Pressure decreases when you increase the container's capacity. Why you are here today as parents is to increase your capacity to be a good parent. And as soon as you can increase your capacity to be a good parent, you will be amazed at how the pressure will tend to go down for you. Same thing with your child. If your child has anxiety, we have to help them reframe the anxiety into something different. So I've decided to call it something you can be proud of. If your child has anxiety, or if you have anxiety, very simply put, you, my friends, are a Ferrari, okay? You're a Ferrari, and you're in a world full of Chevys. Nothing wrong with a Chevy, by the way. Aren't they both just cars? They're both just cars, right? Yeah, but you'd never take the Ferrari camping. Can you imagine what happens when you take the Ferrari up on a four-wheel drive, up the mountain, camping, and then you go fishing? Can you see how that would stress the Ferrari? That's what we do to our children. If we have a child or a human or an adult or any of our friends that are anxious, they're not just being a jerk. They're not just being rude. They are a finely tuned machine. They are not better. Ferraris are not better. Just take them camping. You'll see they come apart. You want a really fun night with the kids? Go look up on YouTube Ferrari crashes. There's tons of them. And every one of them is usually a left turn with somebody that the minute the light turns green, they gun it. And the minute they gun it and they're turning, the car spins out because it's got too much power, and bam, they're in a tree. And then there's a bunch of people looking at them like, can you believe that? Crashed a Ferrari. Meanwhile, the family in the Chevy Suburban are driving by. To me, I learned growing up that it's not that I'm a special Ferrari, I'm just a Ferrari, and I got a ton of potential in me. And if I can see more and pick up more, then I've got a great advantage, unless I don't understand how to drive my Ferrari. So we're going to show you how to drive your kids and their Ferrari, their anxiety, to a healthier and better place, okay? It's a fairly simple little model. I'm going to go through some questions. This is how you're going to see if you have a high-performing child, or what I would just call a Ferrari. All children are high-performing, but this is one that maybe has a little anxiety. Ferraris, for example, tend to chase perfection. If you have a perfectionist, you very well could have a child with anxiety. What could cause more anxiety than needing to be perfect? It's kind of a weird little irony. Are they more sensitive to things? Are they more responsive to stuff? When I was growing up, I would walk to school. I never understood why this was happening. And as I would walk, and I'd smell like doggy doo-doo. I'd dry heave all the way to school. Like, I'm the only kid that's dry heaving, and I noticed it because I'm a high sensitive. Why am I the only one dry heaving? None of you have to dry heave? No, we're fine. You don't smell that? Nope. I played Little League football. I love the sport. I love it. All my sons have played it, and it is the grossest thing ever. You go get in a huddle, and if you're a high sensitive, all you can do is like, whoa! I got tackled. I'll never forget this. I got tackled, and a guy's sweaty arm left sweat all over me. I walked around like this the rest of the game. The rest of the game. They're like, are you okay, man? Yeah, I'm fine. Why are you putting your arm out like that? Some sweat got on it. Is that nuts? I wasn't obsessive. That's gross. Do you not see that's gross? And this guy's never washed his pants. I'm the only kid in the huddle that's like, do you ever wash your pants? You ought to wash those. That's just wrong. Where's your mother? What kind of woman is she? It's so sad. Okay, some more. Do they get easily revved up? Do they tend to spin out in adverse conditions? You ever taken your kids somewhere and the next thing you know, they're like having a fit? Every Sunday, our kids are asking, those especially that have a little bit of anxiety or worry, they're like, are we going anywhere? Yeah. Where? We're going to your grandpa's house where there will be lots of cousins that you do not like. Do we have to go? Yes, because we are together forever. Do they spin out on adverse conditions? Do they prefer staying on the track or going off-road? You notice some people just love the track because that's kind of where a Ferrari likes to be. The track really works for them. There's not a lot of dust. Ferraris really, they don't like the surprises. Do they feel like they feel every little bump in the road? I have a client that can't even pull his car in my driveway at work because the Ferrari it'll center out. It'll bottom out. It's the funniest thing to watch. I just go stand by the door. come on. I'll just pull it sideways. And he has to like work it sideways to get his Ferrari in. Wouldn't you love to have a Chevy right then? Just boom, boom, boom. Don't you know those people? Have you ever like worried about every little thing? Like the temperature. Some of you right now are even worrying about the fireworks. You know what? Relax. It's just an angel getting clipped. That's all it is. Serious. No, I read the book. It also requires maintenance and pit stops. A lot of high sensitives require more pit stops. Now, we got to get to the road to peace, okay? I'm going to just teach you 5 quick things to get through the road to peace. This is how you get your child or yourself or your neighbor or your parole officer, what have you. You get them on a road to peace. Simply this, put your child in the driver's seat. Remember, this is their race, not yours. If you do not enable them to get strong at their own worry and manage their own worry, you are setting them up to fail as an adult. You can't take away this opportunity. 3 P's that I'd be teaching them. Purpose. I'd make sure your children are really clear about what they're passionate about. What is their unique contribution to this world? I would read every book you can about it, because if you can get your child connected into what they're passionate about, you will see the fear and the anxiety dissipate. Purpose will eliminate the fear. Okay, another thing I'd work on is positivity. Start helping them see good things every day. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I spoke to the law school, BYU Law School. Did you know that suicide rates is the number one profession for suicide, or committing suicide in that profession, are lawyers and attorneys? And they're finding out that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're trained to be so darn critical. They have to critically evaluate everything they read. So they learn in training to be critical, and being critical increases the likelihood of anxiety and depression and other issues. You got to watch out for it. So some great research talks about the fact that if you would just identify 3 positive things a day, and you can help each of your kids have a journal and have every one of them every night write down 3 things that were good, a blessing, or a gift from heaven that you're grateful for today. And if you'll start to do that, you'll see that they actually start positively interpreting their life. And finally, we need to learn to be present. Are they living in the now? The present is the only place where people can act. As Dan Clark said, the only place a human being can act is in the now. The problem is, a lot of us that have anxiety aren't living in the now. We're worried about what happened yesterday, and that creates a lot of guilt. Or we're worried about what will happen tomorrow, and that creates a lot of fear. Where are you living? Lao Tzu, listen to this quote. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. Now, by the way, there's chemical reasons you have depression, right? That could also be going on. There's situational reasons. But even in our situations, when we tend to be depressed over time, it's because we have a lot of tendency to go backwards. If you are anxious, you're living in the future. And if you are at peace, you are living in the present. The only place that peace exists is in the now, which is why the number one tool to eliminate anxiety, ironically, is free. It's called breathing. Because when you breathe and intentionally breathe, you become present. One reason is because you start noticing your breathing. If I sat on your chest, you would start to feel anxious. I'm just sitting here, don't worry about it. That's what happens when we are stressed out. So we have to put the kids in the seat and yourself in your own driver's seat. Start to elevate their emotional abilities. Help them understand how to control their emotional power. Every one of your kids are emotional giants. They know when you're mad. They can see it a mile away. Have you ever noticed that when you're mad, they might get mad? They catch on to your anger, your feelings, and your frustration. So we need to start to model emotional strength. Listen to this quote. This is such a good quote. The world is changed by your example, not your opinion. We live in a world where everyone thinks their opinion matters. And I'm telling you, it doesn't. I have a radio show 3 hours a day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. What matters is what I model, what I live. So your opinion about your child's anxiety will not matter if you don't model these behaviors. Show them how to do it. Show them how to recognize their emotion when you see it. When you see they're mad, point it out. Son, you seem mad. And make being mad an okay thing to feel. Make being sad and glad. Did you know at BYU they did a study where little kids at 8 months can identify 4 basic emotions and mirror them: mad, glad, sad, and scared at 8 months. Have you ever watched that when you're holding a baby, if you were crying, they see you crying, they start to cry? Why do they cry? It's just so weird. No, because they're watching you. Also, we need to talk to our kids about their emotions. When I say, Tanner, you seem sad, what's going on? And then make a safe place for them to talk. All you need to do is state the emotion. You seem sad. You seem happy. What's up? And start letting them share their feelings about their emotion. And last but not least, one of my favorites is turn the arrows out. You'll notice a lot of times when you have anxiety or fear, all your arrows are turned in. You're anxious because you're thinking about yourself. A lot of the best solutions to get rid of your anxiety would be to turn the arrows out. Start serving, start caring, start laughing more. Serve it out, laugh it out, hug it out, walk it out. But watch your ankles if you're walking. Just a little helpful hint. Play it out. One of my things that saved my child's life is he was stressed out. He wasn't sure if he could ever dare go on a 2-year LDS mission trip, is what we call him. Didn't know if he could do it. Didn't think he could make it. And he ended up taking his music, and the LDS church asked him to write a song, and he wrote a song for EFY in 2015, and the song just happened to be called I Can Do All Things. And he wrote it, and it started to make him feel this spirit, like I can do all things. And now he happens to be about 4 months out from coming home from his LDS mission, recreational opportunity, and he's been singing that song nonstop, constantly, to a lot of people and with a lot of people and changing a lot of lives. So we also could dance it out. I just would recommend watch your ankles. The A in peace is that we got to act on the real problem, and this is a really important thing. It's actually where the rubber meets the road. A lot of times when we're trying to help our kids, we talk to them about all of these great things, except what we don't ever talk about is the actual problem. My son didn't want to go to his guitar lesson. We had signed up for a guitar writing class to write songs and all of these great things, and then I went to pick him up to take it, and he didn't want to go. I don't want to go. It's stupid. I don't even know these people. I don't even know if this guy can write music. Why do I want to go with somebody I don't even know, and I don't even know I can write it? Now, you know what you say? You're going. Red rum, red rum. That's from The Shining. Anyway, sorry, wrong audience. Okay. So I want to react to this kid. You're going. We paid money for this, and you said you wanted to go. I don't want to go. I don't even know the guy. You know the guy. The guy's a great guy. Look him up. Google him. Google him. And should we start fighting about if he's a good guy? Do you want to bet the guy is not the issue here? Do you want to bet what the real issue is? That's the smoke. The smoke is everything you fight about with the kid. My son didn't want to go to school in high school because why would I want to take a class from a guy that doesn't even know how to do photography as much as I do? He's never even produced anything that's made money. I want to go to somebody that knows how to make money. So should we fight with him about that? Do you want to bet the real issue isn't what he brings up? I call that the smoke. So smoke is the smoke screen or complaints or stories or excuses, all the overreactions or the underactions, all the things that aren't the real issue. Don't go there. There's one thing you go to with somebody that has anxiety. And the minute you see it, you go to the fire, and the fire is the real issue causing the stress and confusion, and that real issue is one thing. It's called worry. So the minute I see worry in my kids, I don't chase the worry. I go to one thing. I say, son, and I ask him what I call the accurate action question. What's the one thing you can do right now to better manage your worry? You have worry about going to this guitar lesson. What's the one thing you can do right now to manage your worry? Well, not go to guitar. No, that would be avoiding the worry. How are you going to manage your worry today? And we come up with a solution. And guess what happens when your child learns to come up with a solution for their worry? They stop making excuses, and they start making progress. Don't chase everything else. Chase the worry and get them skilled and attuned to handling the worry. There's a great website if you go it's called Playing with Anxiety. You go there, you can get a free book to sit down with your kids and start learning to teach them how to handle that one thing. It's a great free service. They're incredible. I had them on my show. Beautiful work. The C in peace is we got to learn to crack the calmness code. I am a high sensitive, but I don't tend to have worry breakdowns where I can't perform. But I know that I have a code. And what I've realized is that for years, I was uninformed about why I was worried. And I thought how cool it would be if I could be informed about my worry. Would you rather be uninformed and worried or informed and worried? Once I'm informed, and I'd really rather not be worried, Matt. That's why I really like the idea of being a worm dropped in a whiskey shot. Because we think that will take the worry away. But you're still dying, and you're not anxiously engaged. So what I've realized in my life are there's certain things that work for me, and you need to go start looking for what works for your child and create a code. I know every day that I need to manage my stimulation because of my sensitivity. So I have an office that's 3 minutes from my house. And when my house gets too loud and crazy, I go to my office. Even on a weekend. I'll go on a walk. I'll just step out and I'll go breathe. And I just need a little space. Every time I see my clients, I'll work with them. After my last client, I will sit and just meditate, basically, in my office with the lights out. Did you know that 60% of your data comes through your eyeballs? So if you would just shut them once in a while, you could actually bring down a lot of stimulation. So I manage my high sensitivity that way. Arrows out. I know that if I'm turning my arrows out, do you know what I think to myself every time I do a speech? Because every time I do a speech behind 4 great speakers like you saw, I start noticing I'm a loser, even though one of the speakers was talking about not doing that. I still did it. But what I realized is I have this little mantra I say to myself, nobody came here to see you, Matt. Get over yourself. Just deliver the principles. Just deliver the principles. And the minute I start thinking it's not about me, it's about us changing lives of our children, things change. It's so beautiful. It's so powerful. I also know my purpose. I know my passion. And when I'm doing what I love and what I know I'm called to do on this earth, then guess what happens? My anxiety tends to dissipate. I also know that if I'm spiritually attuned, because I know for me, that helps me heal. I know that laughter and true recreation. Have you ever gone on a vacation that didn't recreate you? But it turned you into a spawn of darkness? Yeah, we need true recreation. They're different. I know I need to exercise, and I know you know I do. And I know I need water, because if I don't get a lot of water and instead I get too much carbonated brown soda juice, it tends to harden my body, and not in the good way, okay? And then last but not least, sleep 7 hours. I know if I don't get sleep, 7 hours of sleep, it messes me up. That's my code. And when I live that code, it works for me. I have found 100 other solutions that work for people. Did you know that if you just take a cold shower, you actually will have less anxiety and depression? Now, how many of you just thinking of that made you feel anxious? No, but apparently it kicks in this fight or flight part of your life and your body and your mind and your brain, and it makes you feel like, I'm alive, and it brings you into the now. It's pretty crazy. It's also something I've never done. And nor will I ever do it, because that is messed up. So we've got to figure out what brings the calmness to your child. Last but not least is this. We need to learn to start to evaluate our progress, not through our ego, but through our essence. Okay? And this is what we'll end on. Every one of us, I personally believe, has an ego and an essence. The essence, I think, is the goodness of who you are. In the middle of the night, when you are rocking your cute little baby, and you feel nothing but peace and love for that child, you are in your essence. Okay? Now contrast that with your child bringing home a bad report card because they didn't turn in their assignment on time, and now you're mad, and heads are going to roll. And you're ticked off, and then somebody knocks on the door asking for a Friends of Scouting donation, and you're not even a friend anymore. Okay, now we are not even in our essence anymore. We are now in our ego. So if you're going to evaluate your anxiety, don't do it in the lowest part of yourself. Evaluate your anxiety in the highest part of yourself. Check yourself out through your highest being, your highest potential. What is your purpose? What's your purpose as a parent? Okay, and you can do it a million different ways. Just being in nature can take you to your highest essence. Seeing a sad story that actually draws you in to feel an emotion, that is your essence. If the emotion turns into fear and what about, then now you're moving into your ego to protect. So where I learned this is in a really interesting thing. I was going to be a journalist, and then I blew that all up. And I used to work for Channel 2 way back in the day as a college student, actually. And I worked my way up, and I was on the overnight shift. In fact, all the lactating mothers loved me. And because I would just be doing the news, and they were all up feeding their babies. And it was crazy. Like, I'd go like to the lactation station, and they'd be like, hey, is that Matt Townsend? Can I get an autograph? Sure. Not a big deal. But what I found out that was so powerful is that I was terrified. I'm a young father, and we had this brand new baby, and I'll show you this cute little picture. And I learned this question that, will it matter in 100 years? Because I was terrified to be a new dad. I was terrified to be a second dad, a third dad, fourth dad, fifth dad, and a sixth dad. It terrified me because I didn't know I could do it. So here I am at age, this is when I was 15, I had my first child. No, this is when I was 24 probably. Had our cute little baby Sarah, isn't she darling? And I remember rocking her at night in the rocking chair, and I would feel peace. But when I would think about having to provide for her and feed her and do all these things, it would stress me. But at night, if I could just rock her in the chair, I would feel peace. Well, that little girl, Sarah, grew up to be this woman holding her baby. Her baby's Claire. And that's her husband, Brady. And my little question of, will it matter if I learn to manage my emotion, my anxiety, my fear, at 24, now I'm 48, still have Nana's ankles, but I also have a daughter that knows better how to manage her emotion and her anxiety. And I have a grandbaby that will learn to manage hers. And the research shows if my daughter can learn how to manage it better than I did, then she would actually hand down even better abilities to her daughter. So I was hoping, now that I know this, that we could have handed it down. And then another cute picture of Sarah. This is one that reminds me of her grandma. Always sticking her tongue out. And this is Claire. And this is Claire. Will it matter in 100 years if you can help your family learn to drive the Ferrari? Yeah, it already matters. It already matters. Everyone in this room, it already matters that you learn to be the best person you can be. Because when you're not the best person you can be, how am I supposed to be the best person I can be? Without a Dr. Visciarelli, how could my son have been where he was? Okay, we all have something that holds us back, and in the end, it doesn't have to anymore. My favorite quote, I've used it here before, is that it's by Victor Hugo, who wrote the book called The Miserables, or Les Miserables. And he said, we must be like the bird, who halting in its flight on a limb that's too slight, and feels the limb give way beneath him, yet sings, knowing that it hath wings. We must have the confidence of the bird that's about to land on a limb that can't hold it. And when that limb breaks beneath the bird, you know what the bird does? The bird sings, because the bird has wings. We must empower our children with the wings to fly with the hand that they've been dealt. Everybody, we've got to do it. And I know we are, and that really is why this event is such a big deal. You are the change. You are the change. And I want you to do anything you can do tonight. Will you think of one thing you've learned from any of the speakers? Just one thing. And will you commit to yourself and your spouse on the way out, anybody you're with, anybody you brought, commit to them what you're going to do. And I promise, if you do that one thing, you will see clearly what to do next. And then you do that thing, and you'll see even more clearly what to do next. Thank you again for being here. God bless, and go take care of your families. Thank you. Thank you. Ow!
Thank you, Matt. Nice to know we have so much in common. All right, thank you to all of our uplifting and inspiring speakers tonight, all those messages. Another round of applause for all of our speakers tonight. Pretty amazing. We also want to thank our sponsors and partners for their support. They are listed in your program. We also appreciate all the volunteers. You've seen them here, but also the past 6 years for helping out with Uplift Families. In particular, we'd like to recognize the Uplift Families Board of Directors and ask them to stand at this time. We thank, of course, President Jeanette Herbert, Vice President Abby Vianis, Secretary Ruth Norton, members Laura Miller. Please stand when I read your name so we can give you the credit that's due. Members Laura Miller, Clark Snelson, Barbara Smith, Barbara Levitt, Margaret Wallstrom, and members Elaine Dalton and Secretary Darcy Krutbosch are out of town and unable to be here. But a round of applause for all you do. Thank you. Also, a special thank you to Cactus and Tropicals for providing the stage floral and plant design, web integration for the sound and lighting, and look at this set. Isn't it spectacular? This is Lester Miller who did the set creation. Awesome. Okay, now, the fun part. Open up your programs if you have them handy. If you've been taking notes, open up your programs. Page 4, you will see a sticker, and if you do, you're a winner. If you see a sticker, you are the winner of a special prize, and winners can go to the Uplift Families booth. It's actually in the back to the right. It's got a big sign that says prizes right over there, and that's where you can claim your prize. Quickly, we wanted to thank our donors for tonight's event, donating prizes: Zions Bank, Tom Whitaker, doTERRA, Provo Canyon Adventures, Thanksgiving Point, Zermatt Resort, Snake Creek Grill. Thank you. And time to welcome back to the stage First Lady of Utah, Jeanette Herbert. I hear fireworks going off. I mean, they're celebrating the end of our event tonight. Jeanette, please come back to the stage. Executive Director Steve James and Brad Herbert from Zions Bank to help us with our first drawing. All right, here we go. We ready for this?
We're ready.
All right, this is drawing number 1. Steve and Brad are going to help us with this. Draw a name out of the basket for the Zions Bank special giveaway, a financial Peace University membership. It's a $100 value. For another chance to win, you can enter at the Zions Bank exhibit by the prize table. Oh, I get the honors of reading this. It is Autumn Jensen from Pleasant Grove. Are you here? You can claim your prize. Again, prizes are back at the counter in the back. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we're ready for the grand prize drawing now. A Zermatt Resort package, which includes 2-night stay at the Zermatt Resort in Midway, beautiful. Dinner for 2 at the Snake Creek Grill in Heber, and Mrs. Herbert gets to do the honors. All right, this wasn't my name, Mrs. Herbert. I wish it was. Kevin Davidson from Highland. You're our grand prize winner of the drawing tonight. Kevin Davidson, please claim your prize. And Mrs. Herbert, please, if you'd have any closing remarks.
Well, again, as you can hear, the fireworks are going. They waited until 9 o'clock for us. I'm so glad. And I'm glad we had the warning so we know what this noise was all about. It's been a wonderful evening. I think the speakers have been exceptional. The messages we've received are going to be so beneficial to us if we just, like Matt said, take at least one thing home tonight that we can apply to our families, to our children. I think you'll see it'll make a lot of difference. Just so grateful for the talent we have here in Utah, for the people that are so willing to give of themselves and help us out and help us be better parents and better families. We have, over on one of the tables, I want Art and Janie Brown to stand up. Art and Janie are the ones that, when I first started this, they came to the mansion to me, and they, yes, give them a hand. They had a grandchild that was unfortunately killed by a drunk driver, which got them involved with the MAD program. And they started the Strengthening Families program. And that's what I adopted my program, Uplift Families, from. But as you can see, there's the Strengthening Families over here. They have made a DVD. It is a program that is a training program for families. And Dan Clark is the narrator throughout that. It is a wonderful program. It is worth going home, sticking in, looking. It's something you can do with your family. It gives you great ideas and insights into, how to better your family life and strengthen those family relationships. So I encourage you as young families to pick one up here at the table. Meet with our different speakers tonight. They all have materials and things here for you. And again, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your attendance. Appreciate everyone being here. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you again.
It's been an honor to be a part of tonight's event. Please mingle, meet some of the presenters, and remember, when parents lead, kids succeed. Thanks so much for spending your evening with us.
The prizes. Did you tell them about
Yes,
the stickers?
yes. All right. Have a great night.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you leave tonight, please exit through the south doors. Don't forget to check on page 4 of your program to see if you're a winner of a special prize. To collect prizes, go to the table at the back of the room and you can collect your prize. Have a wonderful evening and good night.